Hello, YouTube. Welcome to episode 51. I hope you're going really well. In this episode, I'm going to do the intro through the podcast really shortly. But we're going to be having a chat about, am I gay enough? This is a really hard topic for me to talk about. I'm just going to share that with you. But I know that it's not just hard for me, it's a tough topic for you. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, hang around and watch, because the concept of enoughness and the balance between being too much, the fear of being too much, and the fear of not being enough has us kind of going for this impossible middle ground, has me going for this impossible middle ground. Anyway, it's going to be a great episode, as they all are, and I'm really glad that you're here. All right, shall we get into it? Yuma and welcome. I'm Phil McAuliffe. I'm the loneliness guy, and this is Connection Over Coffee. This is a podcast that proudly serves and supports you, a gay man experiencing loneliness, and helps you take steps to getting the authentic connection that you need and deserve. Thanks, you. Don't know what that was. Thanks for joining me. Please go make yourself comfortable, and I'll go get us some coffees. Okay, if you're listening to the podcast, you would hear the sound of coffee being made. But now you just get to hear me sipping tea and trying to not slurp it. Here you go. Welcome to episode 51 of Connection Over Coffee. In this episode, we're going to be talking about whether I feel gay enough, and we'll explore what this actually means and how the concept of enoughness can feed our loneliness. Finally, I'll provide some clear advice on why questioning our enoughness, your enoughness, my enoughness, isn't on. It's not cool. It's going to be a great conversation, and I'm really glad that you're here for it, because remember, it always takes courage to engage with content on loneliness. If you're coming back for another coffee and a chat with me, or if this is the first time you've pressed play, I want to say that I'm proud of you and I'm grateful, as always, to you for joining me. But before we get into the episode any further, I want to say that this podcast is proudly recorded, edited, and uploaded in Canberra, Australia's capital city, on the traditional country of the Ngunnawal people. And I humbly acknowledge and pay my respects to Ngunnawal elders past, present, and emerging. And I also want to acknowledge and welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening, and indeed, wherever you are in the world, all First Nations people. I want to say hi and welcome. I also have a few messages that I always seem to forget to say, and I want to get them out of the way first so we can get into the good stuff. The first one, there's a link in the show notes that will take you to my website, where all my content destigmatizing gay loneliness and helping gay men like you get the soul-nourishing connection that you need and deserve. It's all at the lonelinessguide.com. And there are also details on that site of my public speaking services for businesses, groups, other podcasts, and mentoring and coaching services to help guide you through your loneliness. That's you, listener. Special emphasis on you. Because I invite you to go to my website and check out how I can support you and guide you through your loneliness, especially if you feel what I say in this episode speaks directly to you. Secondly, connection is the antidote to loneliness, and humans require community to thrive. But the irony of a podcast is that unless you're gathered around a speaker with friends, or perhaps listening to me with a car full of people as you're driving, this is often time that only you and I share together. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the intimacy of our time here together, but there's connective power, absolutely connective power, in knowing that there are other beautiful gay men around the world who are also listening to these words and working through their loneliness. And I want to do something about that. I want to have a community that helps you thrive. And if you're up for it, I'd love it if you could please share a pic with me of you enjoying your coffee wherever you are in the world. This will go on socials, so make sure it's suitable because I'd like to tag you on my socials for others in the world to know that they're not alone either. Finally, I've got bold ambitions for the work of the Loneliness Guy and the role that it would play in the world to support the global LGBTIQA plus community feel less alone in their loneliness. So if you're in a position to support me in this work and you want to find out more, please tap the invest link in my bio and let's set up a chat about how you and I can change the world. Now, on to me not feeling gay enough. There's a bit of a story here that I'm going to start with. So I invite you to get comfy, get settled, make sure that your coffee's at a great temperature, or your tea, or your wine, or whatever it is that you're sitting with me here. That's terrible English, and it does bode well for a very loquacious conversation if I can't sort of get my words out already. I guess one of the reasons why I'm stammering over my words is that I want to say that this is going to be hard. This is going to be hard. Vulnerability is always tough. Being vulnerable is always requires courage. And in many instances, it takes like a lot of courage for me to be vulnerable. And I guess that's the place to start. I received some feedback over the past few weeks from people who are also engaged in this work. And when I receive feedback from people who are engaged in this work, who are also in their arena, doing their thing in the world, not passive spectators who are yelling out from the cheap seats, but people who are actually engaged in doing the work similar to what I'm doing. And I received feedback from two people, and sort of within the space of a few days. And that feedback was saying that I need to put more of myself and my story into my work to make me and the work, the content here, more relatable. And I have to say, this makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. It's great advice. It is really great advice. And yes, like it's great advice because humans connect with stories. We connect with the experiences of others in a way that talking about something in a real sort of distant, more academic way, we can kind of get it, we can grasp it, but, it doesn't sort of speak to our souls. Sharing stories connects us to each other's souls, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I want to go back to the first point. It takes a lot of courage for me sometimes to continue to put me out there. And I do it, but just like I am right now, I wrestle with that vulnerability. And I want to say that really clearly. I'm wrestling with it right now. And so when I know, when you reach out to me to have a chat with me, either like seeking my input, and seeing what I can do to support you through your loneliness through my coaching and mentoring programs, I know how hard it is to wrestle with that, with the courage that's needed to be vulnerable. But here I am, I'm being vulnerable. When I put me out in the world, I realized that it's not just me that I'm putting out there. Like I have kids. I, realize that when I put photos of me out there or content out, like once it's out there, I have absolutely no control over it. And there's a lot of reasons why I would like control. Some of it is to do with, wanting to manage how I'm perceived in the world. And often, like my previous career before doing this was in international diplomacy, and as a worker in the Australian public service. And me putting sort of content about myself out into the world essentially was a risk, was a security risk to me, my family, like to my work, to my job, to my country. And so after 23 years of doing that, where, you know, there were security clearances, there were all that kind of stuff, like my government knows so much more about me than I knew about me for a very long time. And it feels to me like there's this hangover of that, wanting to carefully manage my image, wanting to sort of, you know, be just so. And the irony of wanting things to be just so is that it is absolutely unsustainable, and it absolutely feeds loneliness. Absolutely, like shadow of a doubt, feeds loneliness in my instance, in my sort of example. Because if I'm not showing up as me, then you're connecting with like an image of me, and nothing good comes from that. You're not served, and I don't feel like, you know, I'm actually doing anything, because, you know, you're connecting with the image of me. I want to say that. I wanted to share that with you because it's really important to give that kind of context. And in going on with the story, I want to say that, yeah, it is absolutely fucking hard to continue to show up day in, day out, to risk judgment. This work is my passion. This work is what I absolutely know that I am here in the world to do right now. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But I really want this. I really want this to work. So you know that you're not alone. You know that you're not, you know, you're not broken. You're not some kind of defective human. You're a beautiful human who's experiencing loneliness. You're having an uncomfortable human moment. And I want you to know that you're not alone. And you know that you're not alone when I show up. But again, it's really hard. And what I want to say is that the feedback that I received, which was well-intentioned, well-meaning, and right, really struck a nerve within me. Because all too quickly, the feedback, again, well-meaning, well-intentioned, well-delivered, and correct, morphed within me from my verbal response of like, oh yeah, great advice, thank you, into an internal response of, fuck, I'm such a fraud. And I know that these thoughts and feelings of being a fraud are really common, and they're a common symptom of what's called the imposter syndrome. And because I've done a lot of work within myself over the past 6 years to better understand where my sort of thoughts and feelings of being a fraud come from, and the work that I do as a coach and a mentor, I know that I'm not alone. I know that it's really common. I know that it's really common, and it's such a powerful behavioral driver in me, that I know that I will say and do almost anything to be found out to be a fraud, to avoid being found out as a fraud. And so that actually drives a whole lot of achievements in my life. And it's really common. It's so common, particularly amongst people who are driven, who are, I want to say ambitious, but determined, who want to make an impact on the world. And in many instances, that kind of imposter syndrome, well, all too often, that imposter syndrome is associated with women in popular culture. And it's so not true. It's associated with humans. And this is, as I said, a really powerful behavioral driver because it's an almost universal experience for all the humans that I support. And if you identify as someone who experiences imposter syndrome and like the many different symptoms of that syndrome, I want to say that you're absolutely not alone. Because for me, the response of feeling like a fraud comes right after whether I wonder if I'm something enough. And in this instance, it's about being gay enough to do this work, at the Loneliness Guy. And that might just be like absolutely nonsensical to you, but within me, it is like so crystal clear because it takes me milliseconds to get from receiving that well-intentioned feedback to me not feeling that I'm gay enough or smart enough or relatable enough or fit enough or handsome enough or whatever, like insert word here, enough to do this work. And I can, as I said, get there in a millisecond, and it is absolutely my superpower. And because I don't feel gay enough, like, well, I want to explore why I don't feel gay enough. I'm 45 years old. And I only recently, like within the last 5 years, started coming out of the closet. I've spent close to 30 years wrestling with my sexuality internally. And sometimes that not enoughness is a defense mechanism against judgment. And because, there's parts of myself that I really didn't want the world to see. I didn't want to acknowledge them, let alone the world to see that and then judge it. So I don't feel gay enough because it just like I feel like still freshly out of the closet. I was in a relationship with an awesome woman for almost 20 years, and we were married for 16 and a half years. And together we have two kids, two sons who are now 15 years old. And I came out to my then wife and very close friends in October 2017 while we were living in Seoul in South Korea. And we were living there because I was a diplomat posted to the Australian Embassy. And then in August 2019, and while we were living in Wellington in New Zealand on my former wife's diplomatic posting, my then wife and I, we decided to separate, and I came out of the closet to live life as a gay man. And I suspected, as I said before, that I was gay like ever since I was about 14 years old. And I didn't have the courage to come out when I was younger. It took me almost 30 years to own my sexuality and accept it for the superpower that it is. And indeed, my hidden sexuality is one of the things that absolutely fed my loneliness. And I was terrified of being seen and being caught out saying or doing anything that could possibly raise suspicions and out me. And as I mentioned before, like my career and my relationship felt to me that they all relied upon me thinking and acting in certain ways, usually to meet expectations that I thought were on me, expectations of being perfect. Because if I wasn't perfect, that reflected poorly on my country. And if I wasn't like the image of the perfect man in a hetero relationship, that would absolutely like raise suspicions, provide a crack in the facade, and the whole thing will come crashing down. And I deprived myself of my sexuality to meet those expectations that I thought were on me. And it seemed I did it because it was like the price I had to pay, and I paid it until I couldn't pay it anymore. But now that I'm gay, I'm in a committed relationship with the beautiful man in my life, Jeff. And when Jeff and I met, we met on Grindr and we were chatting for a few weeks. And We've lived together in a committed relationship ever since the start of the pandemic back in March 2020. And we're now joint homeowners in Canberra, and we're building a life together and our family under the concept of two houses, one home. So the kids know that when they're home, whichever house they're in, whether it's our house or at their mum's house. And I have to say, just, by the by, that I could never imagine that life would look like this, with people loving me for being me and wanting me to be me in the world, and wanting me to be me in a way that serves and supports. Because it was the opposite of what I thought I needed to do to be loved and feel that I belong. And so my life story could look really different to yours. Over the last 20 years, I've lived in Australia and Venezuela, Vietnam, South Korea, and New Zealand. And so, my community is not really there. My community is more sort of amorphic. It's not like, I haven't really put down roots in many places over that time, which again, absolutely fed my loneliness. But to me, there's many instances in that story of mine that point to me not feeling gay enough, not being gay enough. The first one is that I'm in a committed monogamous relationship. And it seems to me, and this is absolutely without judgment, if it works, like, great, go for you. But it seems to me that open and polyamorous relationships feel a lot more common than committed monogamous relationships. And perhaps unlike you, I came out in my 40s, not in my teens or in my 20s. So I actually I feel like I've missed out a whole lot of that kind of formative, the formative stuff. I have my own formative stuff, but it doesn't feel like that kind of, dare I say, stereotypical gay experience. And, we're a gay couple who have kids. And while that's more and more common, there's often, it's like, depending on the relationship, kids might be in the picture, kids might not be in the picture. It's all fine. And also I look around me and, I've never taken party drugs. I've never been to a circuit party. And perhaps shockingly, I don't really have follow a queer or gay pop icon. Like Lady Gaga, fine, Kylie Minogue, okay, but I don't feel like Beyonce, yeah, good, but I'm not fanatical about them. So seems small, but in my mind, it feels like, there's this standard which I'm not meeting. And on top of all of that, we live in the suburbs. We live right in the heart of a suburb of Canberra. We don't live in the gay suburb of Canberra. And before you roll your eyes and go, oh, Canberra, I just want to let you know that it is the most tolerant and accepting place in Australia to be in a same-sex relationship. It is so completely normal. And indeed, the gay area of Canberra has the most same-sex couples in it per capita anywhere in Australia. Fun fact. So I don't want to hear, if you're from Sydney or Melbourne, it's like, oh, it's Canberra. If you haven't lived in Canberra, don't knock it. I'm not interested. So there's the evidence that says that, I'm not gay, that where I feel like I'm not gay. And where I come back to is that the evidence that says that I am gay enough is that I really enjoy gay sex. I've always enjoyed gay porn. And I get actually really angry at having to justify why I feel gay, why I am gay, because I say I am. Full stop. That's enough. But I want to go back to why I was triggered in receiving that feedback. So there's a little bit of my story there and why I don't feel gay enough. And I want to say that, I want to explain now why I was triggered. Because the well-meaning, well-intentioned, well-delivered feedback on how I show up to support you triggered me. Absolutely. And I pushed myself into a shame spiral because I engaged in some good old-fashioned comparative gayness. And whenever I play the game, like whenever you play the comparison game, regardless of the topic, I always find a way that I lose. So comparative gayness, I lose. Comparative loneliness, I lose. Comparative need for help, need for, I don't know, like whatever it is. Like I always find a way to lose because someone somewhere always has it better / worse than me, even if I've just made that person up. But a shame spiral is horrible. And I feel you know what it means. Like a shame spiral feels like I'm then in a shame storm. And for me, the shame spiral that I was engaged in went something along this, like this. I received the feedback. I responded saying, oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. And then within my mind, I went, wait, why did they provide that feedback? No. Like, why did they really provide that feedback? No, like really. This is like the conspiracy theorist in me going, no, like, sure, they want me to do well. They want me to, provide nice feedback to help me along. But no, why did they really do that? It must be because I'm not good at what I do. Oh, fuck. They think I'm a fraud. Fuck, I am a fraud. I'm really full of shit. And who am I? Who am I to be doing this work? I'm not even a real gay. Absolutely content in that, Mark. I'm not even a real gay. And I guess the only logical thing to do is to stop doing this work, to stop showing up in support. Because if I can't even get it right, if I can't, like, how can I possibly get it right if I'm not even a real gay? How can I get it right if I'm not gay enough? I just want to say right now, this is really hard. This is really hard to share this with you. I'm like sweating, like it's warm in this room, but I'm like sweating more than the temperature would suggest. This is really hard. I'm in the middle of a shame storm right now. Because I went down, like, while that took me a few minutes to explain that shame spiral to you, that downward shame spiral, it happened in seconds within me. Happened in absolute seconds. And that shame spiral started with, receiving the well-intentioned, well-delivered, well-meaning feedback and stopped. Well, didn't stop, but had me in a destructive narrative that actually had me questioning who I am and how I am in the world. That was really impressive. It's an impressive talent that I've got. And I'm going to say it's an impressive talent that you have too. And it made me go numb. Made me go numb. Like I was awash in a shame storm. And then I got sad. And then I got really angry. And when I realized that I was angry, I remembered that anger is often fear's bodyguard. And then I decided, once I became aware of that, once I had that kind of aha moment, which wasn't an easy, like, tidy process, it took a while. I got curious about why I felt scared. And that curiosity led me to talking to people who are in my corner, who I knew who would respond without judgment and would simply listen to me, not solve it, but simply listen to me. And that included Jeff and also some of my coaches. And I learned what's at the heart of it all. Despite everything that I've been that I've I want to say endured in life, experienced in life, it feels that I don't belong. It feels like another example in my life where I'm on the periphery, not quite enough to be like fully in it, but, on the periphery. And there's so many instances through my life where I can point to examples where I felt that I don't quite belong enough. Instances in year 12 in high school, so senior year, if you're in the US, in high school, where, I was good friends with someone and they were allowed to invite 20 people to their party on a weekend, but I just happened to be the 21st, so I didn't get an invitation. Just, enough. And here I was thinking that they were like great friends. We were close, but obviously not close enough to warrant an invitation to a party. And it seems minor, but God, it hurts. It hurts. And my ability to make myself feel that I don't belong, that I'm on the periphery, comes from like lots of different examples in my life where that was the conclusion that I reached. And this felt like another one of those. I didn't feel that I was gay enough to do this work. And this work is so fundamentally important to me. It was a horrible feeling to essentially convince myself that I'm a fraud. But in all of that fog, in all of that shame storm, the word enough was the big clue. Enough, listener, I want you to pay attention to this. Enough has an absolute hotline to shame. Hearing or perceiving not enough, or a message of being too much, are sure shame triggers for us humans. They are for me, and I know they are for you too. That was really tough to say, to get my mouth around it. So I want to say, not actually emotionally tough to say, but hearing or perceiving not enough or too much messages are sure shame triggers. That's a real tongue twister. Sure shame triggers for us humans. And I want to I want to just sort of sit for a moment with you on the too much, because that's the other side of this impossible tightrope of enoughness that we always try and walk. On one side, we've got too much. You're too something. You're too loud. You're too bossy. You're too aggressive. You're too smart. You're too blunt. You're too direct. You need to dial it down. All messages that I've received in my life. You need to dial it down. Conversely, you're not fast enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good looking enough. You're not straight enough. You're not gay enough. All messages, and there's like dozens of other kind of examples that are just sort of immediately sort of leaving my mind, where I've been told that I'm too much. Sorry, not enough. And so, like you, I have been trying to walk this tightrope in my life of trying to be enough, just enough. Good enough to not get bad attention, but not too good to get the wrong kind of attention. And this impossible balance is something that's really common, particularly if you're Australian, particularly if you're a New Zealander, particularly if you're in the UK. And it speaks to what we call the tall poppy syndrome, which is full of shit. It's crap. I'm calling that for what it is. But it doesn't stop me trying to do it and wanting to show up in the world in a way that stops me getting the bad judgment, in this instance, not being gay enough, and gets the good judgment. You're plenty gay. You're sufficiently gay. I'll get to sufficiently gay in just a minute. But I want to say this. There is no way around a shame storm. And I've learned, often through bitter experience, that I simply need to let the shame storm happen. And if you know me, you know that patience is not one of my qualities. I'm very determined. That's positive. I'm determined to make a difference and make a mark in the world in a way that shows up and supports you. But I struggle to be patient in my determination. But a shame storm requires me to be patient. That's why it's really testing for me. And I know that the way to help calm a shame storm is to talk about it aloud with someone who I know will respond with empathy. And that's to not judge me. And then, and who will listen to me. And then I need to go and practice a shitload of self-care. And part of that self-care is being curious about why I was triggered, not judging myself about it, but curious. And this is what I say to everybody when they call me for to seek out my mentoring services. Judgment feeds loneliness. Curiosity kills judgment. And you kill judgment, you kill your loneliness. So we need to get curious. Always curious. And it takes courage to be curious when you're feeling like shit about yourself. But there's a big difference between curious as a way of, this is graphic here. It's like, if you do it too soon, you're kind of doing the equivalent of picking an emotional scab just to see if it's healed. So I do it after I've taken care of myself, like gone for a walk, journaled, exercised, play a computer game. City skylines absolutely helps. Let me just say that. So I got curious in this instance about why I felt that I didn't belong. And with kindness and honesty, because it's always kindness and honesty, because, every conversation is made better when we approach it with kindness and honesty, including conversations within myself and yourself. I had used my superpower of, turning that feedback into like another instance of where I'm a fraud and feeling not good enough. I turn this into another example of how I don't belong. And for me, perfection, and for me and you, listener, viewer, perfection is a trap. It's a trap that me and you fall into all the time. Because as I said before, like perfection is walking that tightrope, that impossible tightrope. And if you're perfect and you're showing up perfectly without any kind of recourse for, judgment, you're not going to get any judgment. And so like you, I often want to wait until I've got things right before I do it. I'm going to say that the loneliness guy is a result of me working through that. But I still, not too far under the surface, the reformed perfectionist lives. And that perfectionist is wanting to control the judgment, to avoid the judgment. Because here's the thing, this is really hard. Being perfect means that I'm worthy of love. In my life, I felt that if I wasn't perfect, then I wasn't worthy of love. Jeff knows this. And so when we, fight or disagree, or I do something to upset him, unintentionally upset him, but I upset him nonetheless. And he needs to sort of, retreat and think things through. We're learning, like I ask, are we okay? Because, if I don't clean the bathroom, I can turn that from an instance of, not cleaning the bathroom into like, we're done. And like for me, I can focus on the issue if I know that like I am still worthy of love and belonging. That for me is really important. That was heavy. That was heavy. This is far heavier than what I wanted it to be, listener and viewer. But I guess like we're in this now, like we're well into this episode now. So if you're still listening, well then, this is really resonating with you too. So after I got curious, like part of the curiosity for me is like, then like poking holes in the argument that, I believed, like the thing that I believed about like, how to be gay enough. And I'm like, right. Where did this belief come from? And for me, like the worthiness, sorry, the perfection, the fear of judgment, the wanting to be like just right, speaks to worthiness of love and belonging. Absolutely. And when I sort of got to that point, I realized that I wanted to test whose belief that I had taken on and were trying to live up to. And so when it comes to feeling gay enough, I went looking for like to try and find the authority of who makes the rules. Who makes the rules of what sufficiently gay looks like? I looked on the UN website to see if I could contact the relevant office for international LGBTIQA plus affairs. Because I thought, surely, if you and me are trying to find like the point where we are enough, where we're gay enough, where we're something enough, if we can meet the standard, surely there must be a standard setting office somewhere, some kind of central authority who agrees and determines the global standards of what it means to be sufficiently gay. You might want to be sitting down for this one, listener and viewer. There is no such office. There's no one. There's no office that's setting the standard. Nobody is making the rules of gayness that I'm applying to myself. I'm doing that to myself. And if you, listener, viewer, are trying to be sufficiently gay in the world or sufficiently anything in the world, you're doing that to yourself. That realization made me angry. You could probably hear that in my voice now. Because after all that I've done in my life to allow myself to be who I am and to be proud of myself and who I am, I'd learned that I've been trying to put myself back into boxes to apply to a new set of norms as I sort of learned the ropes of gayness. I was angry, and then, because anger is fear's bodyguard, I was incredibly sad. After doing all of that, I was willingly putting myself back into a box. I was applying an ill-defined set of criteria and rules to my life and measuring myself up as short. Fuck that shit. I'm done with that. I'm here to be me. I want you to be you. Because me being me absolutely is the place. Me being me and committing to being me in all of my glorious messiness, my awesomeness, my awesome humanity. That is the place for real, authentic, and genuine connection that I need and deserve. And my friend, that's the same place that you need to be to get the authentic connection that you need and deserve. So here I am. I'm being me. And I want to share this with you because I reflected on this with the awesome subscribers to the Loneliness Guy. And I shared some of this as I was sort of forming my thoughts with them. And I invited them to share some thoughts back with me about how they don't feel gay enough or feel too gay. And some of the things that I received, some of the feedback that I received were like tremendously sad. And I want to say these, and I want to say thank you to those awesome subscribers who responded very bravely and courageously. But my friend, I feel that you will see some of yourself in these too. And some of the sentiments were expressed were not feeling welcome in gay spaces because they don't fit the mold. Someone said that they're a gay Christian and they don't feel that they belong either in the gay community or in their faith community. Someone said that they don't feel gay enough because they don't own a house to host people in Provincetown or on Fire Island at their stage in life. And I'm seeing this more and more. There's a feeling of growing frustration that gay, the word gay, is synonymous with ripped white men to the exclusion of all others. And as a result, they're finding comfort and belonging in the term queer. Someone said that they don't feel gay enough for preferring quiet potluck dinners with friends over, sorry, did I stuff that up? They prefer potluck dinners with friends over going to gay clubs. But somehow that was something that they felt didn't make them gay enough. And then people feeling not gay or feeling too gay because they don't feel masculine enough. And this is really upsetting. This is really upsetting to hear because for a community that espouses visibility and tolerance and acceptance of all really isn't there. It feels that it isn't there. And there's a lot of reasons for this. An easy target is the media, both social and traditional media, that we sort of consume and idolize a narrow definition of gayness. But you and I are responsible for what we allow to seep into us. I'm guilty of allowing images and words to come into my mind and heart, and I give them a fertile place in which to take root and grow. And I give the most fertile land within me to the thoughts and feelings that I'm not good enough, or that I'm too much and I need to dial it down. I'm not good enough, and so I need to amp it up. or I'm too much and I need to dial it down, and that I have no right to have my voice heard or presence noticed until I'm perfect. And loneliness is the harvest that happens when I plant those hurtful, shame-based thoughts and feelings into the most fertile soil within me. I'm worthy of love and belonging right now, just as I am. My friend, just as you are also worthy of love and belonging right now, just as you are. So in wrapping this up, and I want to say thank you for staying with me for this episode. I've got some questions for you. And as a gay man or queer man, however you want to define, however you want to identify, as the listener, as the viewer, experiencing loneliness, where do you feel that you're not enough in your life? Flipping that question, where do you feel you are too much in your life? And think of examples in answering those two questions when someone has said you're too much. Dial it down. Or someone has said you're not enough. Amp it up. And where are you trying to stick perfection as a way of only receiving the good judgment as opposed to receiving any bad judgment, and as a defense mechanism against yet more bad judgment? Where are you trying to find that impossibly small sweet spot? And indeed, it is an impossibly small sweet spot that constantly moves around. So we're kind of contorting ourselves, trying to get acceptance and feel belonging in a way to meet the external thoughts of an authority that doesn't exist. And so that, knowing that there is no central authority that sets the standards, that tells you what sufficiently gay is, sufficiently anything is, knowing that there's a certain freedom. There's license there to be who you are. And I'm here to tell you, as the loneliness guy, that being who you are, deciding to get to know yourself, and then bravely and courageously committing to being yourself just as you are in that moment, and taking decisions, regular decisions, to commit to being you. I'm here to tell you from my own experience, that's where the beautiful connection happens. That's where it happens. But fuck me, it's hard and scary sometimes, especially when there feels like, there's the hands from the deep wanting to bring me down and convince me again that I'm still not enough. That there are yet more examples of where I don't belong, where I'm a fraud. So I'm really grateful for the feedback. Now I'm really grateful for the feedback. There's been it's been such a great opportunity for me to reflect, such a great opportunity for me to put things into action that come from a place of me being me, from that commitment that I make every day to be myself. It wasn't a comfortable lesson, but I'm really glad for the lesson. So if you're struggling right now, know that absolutely you are not alone. You are absolutely not alone. That's it for this episode. Remember that I'm here to support you through your loneliness and to help you get the connection that you need and deserve. That feeling, that sense of love and belonging that you've been searching for and that you've been like wanting for such a long time. Check out thelonelinessguy.com in the show notes to see my services and the services of the coaches I partner with that are all here to serve and support you. My challenge to you is, with this awareness from this episode, please stop choosing to sit in the comfortable misery of your loneliness. I know that it takes feels like a huge step. And it absolutely takes courage and bravery to take a step. But know that I'm right here for you. The show notes also has a link to how you can join the free mailing list, and you'll not miss any content. And I don't know if you've noticed that social media is in a bit of flux right now. So if you're relying on your social media feed to be told of when I'm dropping new content or new content has, has landed for you, just take that out of it, jump straight onto thelonelinessguy.com and subscribe so you'll not miss anything by being on the mailing list. And if you got something from this episode, why not buy me a coffee to say thanks? There's a PayPal link in the episode description. And money received from you through PayPal goes into me continuing this work. Please know that it's always gratefully received and appreciated. And I want to thank you most sincerely in advance. If you've got any questions for me or any feedback, please reach out to me on socials. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, although I'm not quite sure why, and LinkedIn and YouTube. And you can just send me an old-fashioned email at connect@thelonelinessguy.com. And because, this is social media and need to feed the algorithm beast, please remember to like, comment, and rate and share this episode, all the things. And if you're on YouTube, tap the subscribe and bell button, that stuff. It helps me out enormously and helps others in your social circle who may be quietly experiencing loneliness to know that they're not alone and that you're a safe space to talk about loneliness and how it can make us all feel. This was a tough episode today. Thank you so much for joining me for coffee. Yada. And until next time, please take care of yourself. And together, we'll get you through your loneliness and help you get the soul-nourishing connection that you need. Thank you, YouTube. Wow, that was some self-care is needed on this one. Have a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you next episode. I'll see you later.